That's exactly the kind of leadership that you will have starting today with NASA's new administrator, Jim Bridenstine.
NASA is a science agency. Its mission is to advance science, technology, aeronautics, and space exploration, and to enhance knowledge, education, innovation, economic vitality, and the stewardship of the planet. That's the mission. And that's why past NASA administrators have been accomplished leaders in the fields of government, aviation, and science.
I, James Bridenstine, do solemnly swear.
I, James Bridenstine, do solemnly swear.
This is the first time in history that we have someone without similar qualifications to run such an important agency. Jim Bridenstine, the nominee that we are considering, served as a Navy pilot, and I thank him for his service. But that does not qualify him to run NASA. Just because you know how to fly a plane does not mean that you have the skills and experience to lead the federal government's space agency. And I'm not alone in that opinion. A NASA consultant wrote that Mr. Bridenstine does not have, quote, significant knowledge and experience with how NASA works or deep technical knowledge in aerospace systems. Now, there are a lot of things that a NASA administrator has to do. Most of it is governed by law, and I expect that anybody who is confirmed will follow the law. But the most solemn, the most serious responsibility that the NASA administrator has is final launch authority. A launch is the culmination of thousands of people's work over many years. If something goes wrong, we could lose a payload that's worth millions of dollars or is, in fact, irreplaceable. People could die. That's why this job requires someone with good judgment and an understanding of all of the elements that go into a space launch. And that's why we've always had NASA administrators who have demonstrable expertise in these fields. It is downright dangerous to have someone without this expertise, with this kind of authority. And frankly, it's even more frightening to have a leader who has made a career out of ignoring scientific expertise.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great privilege for me to introduce to you the new administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, Jim Bridenstine.
James Bridenstine is a climate denier with no scientific background who has made a career out of ignoring science. Now, I also don't have a scientific background, but I defer to scientists. I rely on the scientific consensus. And the scientific consensus is not what Mr. Bridenstine says, which is that it's sort of difficult to tell how much climate change is attributable to human activity. The scientific consensus is that climate change is caused primarily by human activity. And Jim Bridenstine doesn't say that that is true. And that is terrifying. Forget our views for the moment about what kind of energy picture we think America should pursue. This is about whether you're going to rely upon people who actually know things, or you're going to rely upon your own politics and your own ideology. And when you have final launch authority, you better rely on science.
In these last few days, I have heard numerous times, quote, "Welcome to the NASA family." I will tell you, it truly does feel like a family here, and I am very humbled to be a part of it.
During his confirmation hearing, Mr. Bridenstine testified that he did not know about the scientific consensus on climate change. He suggested that there were other contributing factors that played more of a role. But the fact is this: almost every climate scientist, 97% of all climate scientists to be exact, have concluded that humans are the primary cause of climate change, 97%. And so there are two explanations for his answer. Either Mr. Bridenstine has not bothered to read up on the scientific consensus on the most pressing scientific issue of our generation, or he does not agree with that scientific consensus. Either explanation makes him unqualified to run NASA.
Thank you also to my congressional staff who have spent an inordinate amount of time and work helping me develop and promote our space policy objectives in Congress. They, along with the NASA political staff, have supported me throughout the confirmation process and ensured that I was as prepared as possible every step along the way. I would not be here without the time, education, and support of stakeholders across the entire space community, from industry to academia and government. All of you have been great partners and they've been immensely helpful and valuable resources for me and my team. To my friends in Congress, Chairman Ted Cruz, thank you for all the help you have provided. I'd also like to thank Chairman Smith and Chairman Babin and Ranking Member Perlmutter. Your friendship has been invaluable, and your bipartisan, that's important in space, it's been very bipartisan. Your bipartisan leadership has been critical to our country. I am excited to continue working with you in this new role.
I want to end by reading a few quotes from one of my Republican colleagues. My colleague said that NASA is, quote, the one federal mission which has largely been free of politics, and it's at a critical juncture in its history. He also said that any NASA administrator would need to have the respect of the people who work there from a leadership and a scientific perspective. He also said that Mr. Bridenstine would add to the politicization of NASA, and that NASA at this critical stage in its history can't afford that. I agree with my Republican colleague, and I urge every member of the Senate to give NASA the leader that it needs and to vote no on this confirmation. I yield the floor.
NASA has a history of great leaders, from the early days of Hugh Dryden and James Webb to our most recent leaders, Sean O'Keefe, Michael Griffin, and Charlie Bolden. I will do my best to serve our storied agency to the utmost of my abilities as we reach for new heights and reveal the unknown for the benefit of humankind. NASA represents what is best about the United States of America. We lead, we discover, we pioneer, and we inspire. I look forward to our journey together. Thank you so much. We're going to have some friends join us now.
ISS, this is headquarters. How do you hear us?
How do you hear us?
This is the crew of Expedition 55 on board ISS. We hear you loud and clear, and a hearty congratulations to our new administrator. Congratulations on your selection to lead NASA as you report to duty. Mr. Vice President, Mr. Bridenstine, welcome on board the International Space Station.
Well, thank you. In case you didn't know, you got a really loud ovation here on Earth. So thank you for what you're doing for our country. Thank you for congratulating me. We have a really special guest here today. He's the Vice President of the United States, and I think he might have maybe a few thoughts for you and maybe a few questions. So I'm going to turn the mic over to the Vice President.
Well, thank you. The administrator and I are delighted that you'd help us make this occasion special. Been a long day for you all, but it's an honor to be able to speak with each one of you. And let me just say hello to the International Space Station, to Andrew Feustel, Ricky Arnold, and Scott Tingle. On behalf of President Donald Trump and a proud nation, thank you for your service in space.